Halloween dear ghouls and goblins of PHS. Today on Real with Chelsey, I'm going to freak your freak with some spooky facts, visit the top 5 most horrifying places in the high school, find out some of the scariest movies you, the viewers, have watched, and finally, give you an interview that's from beyond the grave. Have you ever wondered where Halloween comes from? Why do we wear silly masks and go door to door asking for candy? What's the point? It all started because of an old Celtic tradition. We dress up to honor the Celtics, who would wear masks and scare away evil spirits to prevent demons from identifying them as humans. Trick-or-treating represents how the spirits would visit the Celtics' homes disguised as people in hopes of claiming a new soul. Pretty freaky, right? The word Halloween comes from All Hallows Eve. Hallow meaning saints and Een meaning evening. That's where we get All Saints Day. The tradition of singing, lighting candles, and performing rituals to ward off evil spirits, or put the dead at peace, has changed throughout many cultures. The newer tradition that we have nowadays started here in America. Halloween is the evening celebration before All Saints Day, but for me, it's just another day to wear a costume, trick-or-treat for some free candy. Even though we don't take place in these spooky old-time rituals, there are still some spooky places here at PHS that some students wouldn't even dare to go to. I went out and visited the top 5 most horrifying places I could find. Let's take a look. Number 5. The stairs in the business wing. Not for student use. Guess I'll see why. Oh, don't want to go in there. No. Number 4. The Mattachoni Theater with all of the lights off. Help? Number 3. These stairs leading down to that door to the theater workshop. Hello? Doesn't want to be bothered. Number 2. AV Study Hall. I heard somebody died in there. Number 2.5. Miss Van Rij's room. Maybe she could lend you a hand? I'm so funny. And last but not least, the scariest places in Perry High School is Mr. Conrad's office. Alright, you ready to go in? It's pretty horrifying. And there he is. I'm so sorry! I'm so sorry! Oh, pretty horrifying. Pretty horrifying. Those were some pretty creepy places. Especially that last one. The high school would be a perfect place for a horror movie, wouldn't it? Speaking of horror movies, Halloween is the perfect time to watch some blood-curdling, scream-inducing, heart-pounding, keep you on the edge of your seat thriller movies. Let's take a look at some of the movies that you found to be scary.
The scariest movie I've ever watched is The Seed of Chucky.
The scariest movie I've ever watched is The Descent.
The scariest movie I've ever seen is Crazies.
The scariest movie I've ever watched is probably Insidious.
Mine's probably Quarantine.
The scariest movie I've ever seen is The Sinister.
The scariest movie I've ever watched is Pet Sematary.
According to IMG.com, the top 5 scariest movies are number 5, Silence of the Lamb. Number 4, Alien. Number 3, Jaws. Number 2, Psycho. And coming in at number 1, The Exorcist. I don't care what anyone says. The Poltergeist will for always and ever be the scariest movie I've ever watched. I mean, just the theme song gives me chills. Speaking of Poltergeist, I have a very special guest on today's show. She has had some contact with the paranormal. Please welcome Miss Katie Krepp. Katie, thanks so much for being on the show today. Thanks for having me. So, what's your story? What happened with the ghost?
Well, when I was a little girl, I was sitting in my basement, and I actually happened to see a flying hand, just a hand, shoot across from one side to the other. It was one of the scariest things that my young mind had ever seen at the time, and it still rests in my mind today as one of the scariest things I've ever had to experience.
Right, so ever since then, has anything ever happened again at your house?
Yes,
like
actually.
What happens?
There's voices that I hear a lot of times. It almost sounds like the TV's on in a different room, but sometimes it happens when I'm home alone. which is really the scary part.
Yeah, that sounds horrifying.
And it's not just me that hears them. I was in my room one night, and my grandma comes in to make sure that my radio was off because she thought she heard it, but my radio wasn't on. So,
See, that happens a lot. I've heard a lot of things that happens with a lot of older houses. I mean, clearly because a lot of past history's been there. But actually, I have this one cousin, and he just built a house, and he swears he hears things in his house. And I'm like, come on, this is a new house. But it's so interesting to see where the paranormal can end up being at, where ghosts and spirits can go. Even, say, an old house. Is your house older?
fairly old.
So
yeah.
even an old house like Katie's or a newer house like my cousin's. Well, that's all we have today on Real with Chelsey. I'm Chelsey saying keep it real and have a safe and scary Halloween.
Where'd Chelsea go?
Katie, snap your fingers.